The first time that I actually understood what self-harm was, I was at my martial arts studio in middle school, and I saw someone with a lot of scratch marks. It was pretty hard to avoid. Later on, at a moment where I was extremely emotional, I remembered that and decided to use that as my coping mechanism.
When did you say, okay, I'm self-harming myself, I should stop?
It was a difficult time for everybody. Oh, she's just doing it for attention. Oh, they're doing it for attention. Even if someone is doing it for attention, that still means there's a problem. Give them attention, figure out what's going on. Don't just brush them off. One of the reasons that people cut is because when you bleed, it releases endorphins and you feel better. It takes the pressure right off.
Wow.
After one of those presentations where I had shared that information, a group of girls came up to me. They must have been like 14 years old, and they were like, "We know someone who's doing this. She told us not to tell anyone." Well, ladies, thank you for sharing that with me. Unfortunately, you do have to tell an adult. We take people's hardest times and we turn them into something that is all about shedding light. And there were moments in my past where I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna get to do what I thought I wanted to do. I don't know how to move forward from this, but there is always a move forward. You're not stuck. Eventually the answer will come, and you might be surprised by how you thought the thing that was dragging you down is actually the thing that's gonna move you forward.
Every year, around 727,000 people die by suicide worldwide. It is one of the leading causes of death among young people, and millions more live with depression every single day. This is a real and widespread issue, but there is also a way to prevent it. I'm a filmmaker and a storyteller, and while working on a film about suicide, I realized how little I truly knew about this topic. So I started listening to people, to their stories, and to their experiences. What you're about to hear is one of those conversations. Whether you're struggling, someone you love is, or you simply want to understand more, this is for you. This is Do Not Leave, a Call to Stay. Today, I'm joined with Kate Edelson, who has worked with NAMI for almost 10 years, including 7 years at NAMI Miami, where we are today. Thank you, Kate, for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Kate has an extensive experience in mental health education, particularly with teenagers and high school teachers. What can you tell us about that, your experience with the topic of mental health and suicide among young people? What's your relationship with that?
Sure. So when I started at NAMI Miami back in 2018, I started as a volunteer, but I was unemployed at the time. So I came to volunteer a lot, like almost every day, until eventually they hired me. And during that time, my main passion that I really wanted to do, I had it in my head that I really wanted to work with teenagers, that I wanted to spread mental health awareness specifically with youth. And so one of the most amazing things that NAMI Miami does is that we have a program called Ending the Silence, or ETS for short, where we go into middle schools and high schools all over Miami-Dade. And it doesn't just have to be schools. It can be after-school programs or faith-based programs, anything like that. And we talk to youth about mental health conditions. And it's a great presentation because it's evidence-based. So there's like a presentation that is very much, what is mental health? What are mental health conditions? And it explains things really well in a way that the students can understand. And it mixes it with personal experience. So I would go to different schools or these different programs, and I would tell students, this is what mental health is. We all have it. And these are what mental health conditions are. If it looks like this, if you're depressed or feeling bad for over 2 weeks and it's not going away, you might have something you need to deal with. We didn't really use like diagnoses. We just talked about it generally.
Okay.
And then we referred them to resources. We're like, here is what you can do. Here's where you can go. And we even talked about suicide a little bit as well, letting them know that if someone does decide to take their own life, it's not their fault. That's one of the most important things.
Yeah.
Even mental health professionals sometimes miss when someone is thinking about that. So that was really amazing because not only could I share this information with students, but I could also share personal experience as well.
That's great. That's great work you're doing, Kate. And probably all of this that you're doing is because this topic has been important throughout your life, your personal experience. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about your personal experience with in your youth, with your friends? What happened that made you interested in wanting to help others?
Yeah. So it felt like the topic of mental health and mental health conditions followed me from a very young age. Starting, I think, as early as middle school, I was probably dealing with what I would say is maybe a bit of a mix of anxiety and depression. And then around age 14, I started to engage in self-harming behaviors. And at the same time, a lot of people and my friends and family were struggling as well with mental health conditions. And by the time I was in high school, I think most people in my friend group and around me were experiencing some form of mental health condition in a wide range, whether it was untreated PTSD, and most of these conditions were untreated. No one was saying, oh, I've been diagnosed with this or that. Everyone was just kind of in a bad
dealing
place.
With that without knowing exactly, right?
Yeah, and you could see that. So not all of us were running around not doing very well, doing our best.
And give us a little bit of your context. Like, where do you come from, your family, how many members are there in their family, your family dynamics? Tell us about you.
Yeah. So I'm the eldest daughter, and I'm from South Florida. I grew up in Fort Lauderdale, which is where most of my family lives now too. And so I went to high school in Fort Lauderdale at the same place, starting in lower school. My siblings also went to the same school. And I am half French as well. I speak French in my family. My mom is an immigrant. And on my whole mom's side of the family, we all speak French together, and we speak English too. It's a mix. And so growing up in Fort Lauderdale, this is where I had a lot of my experiences until eventually I went to college in Connecticut. And then I had experiences there as well.
You had both experiences in high school here and in college. And you told us a little bit about your mental health challenges. Would you like to talk a little bit about that? Because it's very important. This is the key of this project, Do Not Leave, A Call to Stay, is the idea we have to talk about all of this. Because when we talk about it, we help others that are struggling, that might be listening to this. So sharing our stories is very important for them to learn that they're not alone. And it's way more normal than they think. Very common.
Yeah.
So what did you tell us a little bit more about that? Where did the struggling came from? What was the cause of that? How did you manage, or when did you say, okay, I'm self-harming myself, I should stop?
Right. So where did things start? Well, it sort of started with my family dynamics. My parents got divorced when I was 8, and it was a difficult time for everybody. Everyone was struggling, and as a kid, a lot of times people might think that you don't notice things, or that you might not remember things, but I remember things very clearly, and I remember how unhappy everyone was. And then also when I was in school, and I was also surrounded by people who were also having a difficult time, it just kind of felt like when I was at home, things were a little tricky. When I was in school, things were a little tricky. And then even some of my extracurriculars that I did outside of school, people were not doing well there either. I remember the first time that I actually understood what self-harm was when I did martial arts in middle school, high school, and college. But I was at my martial arts studio in middle school, and I saw someone with a lot of scratch marks on their arms, and it was pretty hard to avoid. And I remember later asking my friend, hey, what was that on her arm? And he said that she was self-harming. And that was the first time I noticed that, or had heard of that, and I never forgot it. That's the wild thing, is that I was maybe 13, 14 years old. I saw that. And then later on, at a moment where I was extremely emotional, I remembered that and decided to use that as my coping mechanism. I was like, I feel so bad. I'll do anything to feel less bad. And it was the thing that I kept in mind. No one had taught me a different coping mechanism. We weren't talking about mental health the way we are now. So that's sort of where it started.
Thank you for sharing all your story, Kate. And yes, I have some of the data here. And suicide is the second leading cause of death among U.S. teens aged 15 to 19. with rates rising steadily since 2007. We're going to put all this data in the description, and also all the hotlines, all the numbers they should call if you're struggling.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be on screen and description. And also heavy social media use, that's something very common, is associated with double the risk of poor mental health outcomes. So it's very common to see in young people that, and a lot of this mental health conditions, self-harm also sometimes leads to suicide, right? Also, I'm seeing here data that it's also very common, unfortunately. What do you have you had any experiences with people having suicidal ideation or having died by suicide in your college, in your younger years of your life?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. I mean, throughout that time in high school, when a lot of people in my friend group were struggling, I knew that some of my friends were thinking about it. I knew I was not the only one self-harming. You know, in my case, I never really went that far. For me, self-harm was really about processing my emotions in one of the only ways I knew how to. And a note on that is, like, I actually didn't think of myself as someone who was self-harming. This was something we use the word dissociate a lot, where you're not really connected with what's happening in the moment. You're sort of somewhere else. And so during these periods of time where I would self-harm, the moment would happen, and then afterwards I kind of acted like it never happened. And because I actually had a skin condition growing up, I have eczema, a lot of people couldn't realize that my self-harm marks were self-harm marks, because they just assumed it was part of the rash that I had. And, you know, I tried to do it in places where people wouldn't see, and, you know, all of these things. And so, yeah, but other people were having real serious thoughts about that. And especially when I first went to college, between my freshman year and my sophomore year of college, that's when things just seemed to get worse somehow. And during that time, at least 3 of my closest friends were hospitalized for untreated mental health conditions with suicidal ideation. So they were saying, you know, either I'm worried that I'm going to do this, or I'm thinking about this. And I had one friend who actually attempted a couple of times. I will say that all of them are doing much better now. Just
Great
so
to
that
hear
people know.
Of course.
All of them are doing much better now. But at the time, you know, and you mentioned a lot of statistics, we know that students or youth between the age of 17 and 24 are at very high risk of developing mental health conditions, a fact that me and my friends were not aware of.
Of course.
So looking back at that time, it's like, wow, like I wish someone had prepared us. But yes, 3 of my good friends ended up in the hospital for very serious conditions, and for thinking about taking their own lives.
That's pretty sad, but it's pretty real. Many people are struggling. And going back to self-harm a little bit, you were mentioning you kind of dissociate. You feel like you're kind of, I think I would say, another person when you're doing the self-harm compared to when you're not. And many, you mentioned also, often go unrecognized. That's very common. And why do you think it remains difficult to discuss this, apart, no matter the progress we're having about talking about all of this? Why do you think it remains taboo to talk about self-harm? And when someone goes through that, they don't reach for help and they choose to do self-harm?
Yeah, I think one might be the case like me, where people don't even really realize that they're doing it. It took me a really long time. I think it wasn't really until college that I was like, I am someone who self-harms. I am doing this. This is a problem, because I studied psychology and neuroscience when I got to college. And that's when I really realized I wanted to help people. And I also realized that if I wanted to help people, I was going to have to start with myself.
Yeah.
And so I was like, wow, I have to stop doing this. But I had been doing it for like almost a decade. So it became a coping mechanism. And in the moment when you're doing it, and it has many different forms, and I definitely used self-harm in a few different ways, not just sort of the traditional way that most people would assume, which is cutting. But when I was doing it, like, again, I sort of just like was focused on trying to get relief from the amount of emotional pain I had. And I think that's part of the problem, is that people would have to admit that they have emotional pain or that they're not okay in order to also bridge the topic of, and I am self-harming as a topic.
So you have to accept the fact that you're struggling. You have to accept the fact that you're self-harming
Yeah.
in order to be able to solve it. It's
Yeah.
like there's a saying that says the first step is to realize, right? Or something
Yeah.
like that. I know it in Spanish. That's why I don't know exactly in English,
Yeah.
but yeah, all of these experiences that you had with your friends, being hospitalized, you suffering self-harm because of your as a coping mechanism. This brings you to work with young people, to want to help young people. It's a very important work that you do, because when we were younger, it's one of the most important parts of our life, is when we get like our personality, where we define who we are in a way. And it's very important for our growth. And what's your experience working with teenagers and high school students? How you seeing? Are you, when you go and talk to them, what do you see? What do you experience in general? What can you tell us about? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So I loved going into the schools and talking to youth. I found that there is a difference before the pandemic and after the pandemic in the students. But I mostly did the presentations pre-pandemic, so in 2018 and 2019 and up until March of 2020. And I think that the students really responded well to both the information presented, but also the personal experience. Because the way that the presentation works is that there's two presenters. The first one leads them through the PowerPoint presentation. Again, those sort of like data, but also a little bit of personal story as well. So for instance, one of the things we talk about in Ending the Silence is the different warning signs of mental health conditions. So one of them is seeing, hearing, or believing things that aren't real. And then I would talk about one of my friends and how he experienced that. Like, I would tell the students, and this would sort of blow their minds. I'd be like, my friend once saw a train pass by his bedroom, and there was obviously no train. Or he was driving someone home, dropped them off, and as he drove away, he continued to see them in the backseat of his car, even though they had left. So, those are pretty mild, but very confusing.
Yeah. And that would be considered schizophrenia, or that can happen without being diagnosed with schizophrenia?
So I'm not a mental health professional, but those hallucinations can often be part of mental health conditions that begin with the word schizo, because there's a few different ones.
Okay.
So that wasn't necessarily his diagnosis, but it was something very similar to that. And there are also other conditions, even bipolar or other mental health conditions, that sometimes have hallucinations be a part of it. And that's sort of part of what makes mental health diagnoses a bit complicated, is that a lot of them are different for each person. Yeah. So, 3 people might have bipolar, and they might all have different kinds of bipolar with different traits.
And have you had any experiences where kids or teenagers go and talk to you and tell you, hey, I'm struggling, don't tell anybody, or something like that? Can you share some of those experiences?
Sure, yeah. So as part of the presentation, I usually talk about self-harm too, and I share that it was a coping mechanism and that I don't recommend it. That it did not help me in the long run. And even now as an adult, even though it's been a very long time since I've done it, I still have almost like intrusive thoughts that are kind of like crawling up, thinking like, oh, you're a little stressed out, are you sure? And I'm like, no, wow. I don't want to do that.
That's crazy. Yeah.
But it also inhibited my way to emotionally process things. So that's been a very slow process. It's taken a lot of therapy, a lot of work, a lot of self-awareness to get to a place where now I can acknowledge and understand my emotions. Because before it was just sort of like, oh no, this is uncomfortable. Let me switch to something that will make it less uncomfortable. And not really connecting the dots on what it was that I was experiencing and what the emotions were telling me, because the emotions, they're telling you something. So during my presentation, I don't go into too much detail, but I do say, I engaged in this coping mechanism. It is what's called a short-term coping mechanism, and there are better ways of dealing with mental health. This will come back to bite you later on in life if you do this. And also we tell the students, listen, many of your friends might be engaging in this and you might know, and they might make you promise to never tell anybody. And while, you know, it's, our friends are so important at that age, like you mentioned, and we always want to stay close together and never betray them, it could make a huge difference for them. And you have to tell a trusted adult, someone that you know will handle the situation well, preferably family or school staff, if that's the case. And so after one of those presentations where I had shared that information, a group of girls came up to me, and they must have been like 14 years old. And they were like, we know someone who's doing this. She told us not to tell anyone. We don't know what to do. And I was like, well, ladies, thank you for sharing that with me. Unfortunately, you do have to tell an adult. You can tell your friend that you're going to tell somebody. You know, it doesn't have to be like this secret, but, you know, you just tell them that you're worried about them and that this is a problem and you think that they need help. And even if they are mad at you, and I've been in situations where someone I really love and care about didn't like me very much for a long period of time because I got them help when they really needed it and they weren't in a good headspace. They couldn't get it themselves. They didn't see what they were doing or how they were acting. And so I think it was really scary for those girls, but I thought it was so brave of them to come up to me afterwards and to just say, you know, this is a real situation. I've had students come up and hug me afterwards, thank me. I've always been really impressed by the students coming up to me and having that moment and wanting to connect with me. I think as a kid, I would have never done that. So
yeah,
I was always really impressed.
And what's
by that.
What do you do when that happens? Like when they tell you, hey, my friend, do you like send them with someone specific, or you guide them specifically to talk with their parents, or what do you do exactly?
Right. So the sort of follow-up plan there, and now times have changed. Now we have in Miami-Dade public schools, we have mental health coordinators, and they often are the ones who are actually bringing us into the schools and coordinating with the teacher. Once upon a time, it would have been the teacher, but now it's these mental health coordinators where afterwards we're like, okay, you know, let's connect you with the mental health coordinator who is often there in the room. And if not, we have their information and we just say, you know, they're going to guide you through the next steps and they're going to help your friend. And then we also provide them with different resources like the number to text for adolescents and other resources that might be useful, such as 988, the Lifeline number in case anybody is having serious dark thoughts.
Perfect. We're gonna also put that on screen. And you mentioned that many of these kids come and tell you what they're going through, and might get scared with the fact, or worried about the fact that maybe their friends get angry, but maybe that's because they don't know, or they're not sure if they're doing the right thing, because
it's intimidating.
But this is like 100%, like it is, you're helping them 100%. There's no doubt about it. So maybe your friends get angry now, but they will understand in the future and they will thank you 100%. You would thank now a friend if a friend of you have done that. Maybe you got angry in the moment, but then in the future you would be very thankful, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I had that one friend who at the time, I mean, she was furious with me. But now we're still friends. She afterwards, when she was better, she realized that what I had done was actually helpful, and she still thanks me to this day. Every now and then she'll be like, oh, you know, thank you.
Because this is an objective fact, like helping them with when like self-harm is not good for you, so it's
very bad.
So
you need help if you're doing that.
And sometimes also kids or young people are going through that, but also sometimes adults do not help because they don't know, they don't understand. Maybe they think they're trying to how do you say, like call the attention? How do you say that? Like to
that they're attention seeking.
Seeking attention, and they maybe get mad at them. They get angry instead of doing what maybe should be doing. What are the common misconceptions adults have about mental health and self-harm?
Well, I'll speak mostly to my experience in it. I once did this Ending the Silence presentation, and there were some adults in the crowd, and afterwards some of them came up to me and they were like, you know, thank you so much for sharing that. I thought that students were self-harming because they were seeking attention. But from my presentation, she learned that one of the reasons that people cut is because when you bleed, it releases endorphins. And you feel better when you release endorphins. It takes the pressure right off. So
Wow.
she understood something that she really had never understood before. And again, self-harm can take many forms. Sometimes it's just by over-exercising, or getting really angry and hitting something, or burning. There's a lot of different things, and we always have to be cautious when we give this information to not.
It's like a spectrum, right? Like you
You
can go
know,
from something very
yeah.
mild to something more extreme.
Yeah, and again, I never self-harmed with the idea that I wanted to hurt myself in the long term. Most of my scars have healed, but it really, when you're in deep, deep emotional pain, oftentimes, bleeding will release those endorphins, and you'll feel better in the moment. It won't solve anything, but you'll feel better in the moment. And so she walked away with a better understanding. And again, thinking that like, oh, they're just doing this for attention. This is traumatic in any way. And even if someone is doing it for attention, that still means there's a problem. Like
100%.
there's all this sort of like shame around, oh, she's just doing it for attention. Oh, they're doing it for attention.
So pay attention.
But yeah, then that means they need help. Give them attention. Figure out what's going on. Don't just brush them off. And I mean, at the end of the day, I think people brush people off when it comes to these serious topics because it involves an acknowledgement that people don't know how to do. They don't know how to handle it. And that's because we don't talk about it enough. We don't understand it well enough. So that's why it's so important to have these conversations, because, now who knows how many people that teacher told after hearing my presentation, how many other people understood, oh, okay, this is what it is. And I remember when I was in high school, people were doing this a lot. Like I was definitely not alone. And I would notice when other people had certain scars and I would know what it is, or I would notice someone who would have so many bracelets on. And when I was in high school, dating myself, their emo phase was very popular. A lot of people were wearing a lot of bracelets for different things. But sometimes you knew what that meant. Sometimes it meant that. And
there are some signs like those, right?
Yeah. And I mean, we live in South Florida. If you're wearing long sleeves in May or August.
I haven't done high school here in the United States.
Okay.
But I saw that, like, it's amazing how, like, I cannot believe it, because you see, like, this very hot weather, very hot day, and most teenagers are wearing, like, hoodies or those things. And I always thought maybe it's a way of covering themselves for some reason. Maybe because they don't like their body. Maybe because they're doing self-harm. Yeah. And so sometimes those signs can be something, or maybe it's only just because it's stylish, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, just like what we say in Ending the Silence, just because someone's exhibiting one or more of these behaviors doesn't mean they have a serious mental health condition or that they need a diagnosis or anything. But these are just things to look out for. And when you put certain things together, then like if someone's always wearing long sleeves and then whenever they're not wearing long sleeves, they have all the bracelets on, and maybe they never go out in a bathing suit.
You add up them. And what do you have to do if you see and you're like, I think this person might be going through this? What should be your action? How do you take action?
So, one is just to express your concern, and the same goes for someone that you're worried about who might be having thoughts about suicide. Really, you just approach them, and timing, tone, all of these things matter, right? You don't want to approach your friend while you're all at the pool. Be like, hey, I notice you are wearing a long sleeve while we're all in our bikinis. You want to talk about what's going on? No, not a good time. Yeah. Not a good time. You want to make sure that they're in a space where they can feel safe, that it's just the two of you, and that it's a good time to talk. Right in the middle of exams, maybe not a good time. And then to take them aside and to express genuine concern and phrase your questions carefully. Yeah. Hey, I'm noticing this. I'm worried about you. Is there something you want to talk about? You can talk to me. Is a good way to approach it.
Don't judge, right? Don't be judgy when
Sometimes people phrase questions and like, you're not thinking about this, are you? You're not gonna do this, are you? And it's like,
You're giving the answer to them. Like,
yeah, you definitely don't want to say yes to that kind of question.
yeah.
So, so the tone and the way that you approach someone in these cases is very important. And just imagine how you would want someone to approach you about a sensitive issue. You wouldn't want them to come in angry, and you wouldn't want them to get emotional. I had a situation when I was 16 where I had self-harmed, and it was one of the only times an adult had ever seen that I had done that. And it was a friend of a friend, and she saw my self-harm marks and started crying. And I totally get why she did, but it was the wrong move, because then she made me promise never to do it again. But that was my coping mechanism. I didn't have anything to replace that.
Yeah.
So I couldn't not do it again. And so I did. I had to break that promise. And on top of it, I could never tell her again. And I couldn't trust her because she got so emotional that it became less about what was happening with me and more about what was happening with her.
Yeah.
I felt bad.
They become the center of the problem in the moment. Yeah. And let me ask you a question from an outsider, because I haven't suffered much depression or mental health issues, as far as I know. And for me sometimes, and that's why this is the reason why I do this project, to understand this world, these issues, these people, and to understand how normal it is to share that. So for people who are maybe like me, who do not know anything about it, and they're like, oh, there's this whole people that are struggling. And for me, sometimes it's a little hard to understand. There are many coping mechanisms or many ways of releasing endorphins, as you mentioned, like eating chocolate or doing sports. Yeah. Why do you think that's the pathway sometimes some people to take? Why do you think that's what's the difference between or what's the thing that makes the person saying, no, this is the way I'm going to cope? Of course, it's not conscious, but why?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, in my case, it was because I saw someone else do it. It was exposure, which is why as a society, we have to be very careful about how we portray topics like suicide and self-harm. There are a lot of studies that show that if you talk about suicide or put it in the news in a way that isn't thoughtful and intentional, it can cause other suicides. Other people might be moved to do it.
Yeah.
And then also, I read a book that talked about Sylvia Plath and other writers who had died by suicide. And sometimes it's just what's available. It's about what's available. Because back in the day, they had those tubes that were linked to the oven in houses, and people could very easily take the gas tube from the oven and use it, block off all the paths for oxygen in a room and release this gas. And it was a very peaceful way of passing. And as soon as they removed those ovens, the rates of suicide declined.
Wow.
So a lot of the time, and it's the same thing with the Golden Gate Bridge. So we had a speaker who you may have heard of, who came, Kevin Hines, and spoke at one of our conferences. He jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and survived. It's an incredible, incredible story. It doesn't sound real. The fact that he jumped into that cold water from so high up, and all the right things came together for him to survive. And now he's a motivational speaker who probably saves lives every day just by telling his story. It's incredible. And so they put a net under the Golden Gate Bridge, and now people can't jump off into the water.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's that simple. It's a deterrent. So one is exposure. That's something to worry about. And then and then putting things in place that, when you see that, okay, a lot of people are dying because this is easily available, then we should fix it. The same way that, if you know that there's a part of the road that causes horrible accidents all the time, we got to fix it. We got to fix that part of the road so that it's not so dangerous.
Yeah. Because sometimes there are moments we're humans, and we're moments in which we are not so rational, or we are more controlled by our emotions, and maybe
The heat of the moment.
Yeah, the heat of the moment might be as we say, in a good moment, in the good place at the right time, the right place, the right time. Well, this would be the other way, right?
Yeah.
And going a little bit to your more professional side, changing a little bit of the subject, you've done 10 years almost with NAMI, from volunteer to professional.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. How did you know NAMI? What is NAMI?
Yeah.
Why so long with them?
Yeah. NAMI. Yeah, I live, breathe, and eat NAMI. So it started in college. Like I said, I was already very interested in mental health, psychology, because of those personal experiences that I was having, and also through school. And so between my junior and senior year, I wasn't in school. I took some time off. And during that time, I was living in Washington, D.C., and I was looking for work, volunteer options. And it just so happened that the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, their headquarters was located in Arlington, Virginia, which is just over the bridge from DC. And so half the time I was working as a server, which is also a very interesting study of mental health in the hospitality business. That was a real eye-opener. And when I wasn't serving, I wasn't working as a server, I would go over to the headquarters at NAMI. And I learned so much while I was there. Like I said, I was studying neuroscience and psychology in school, but learning something from books and from professors, while very interesting and engaging, it's not the same as seeing the real deal. And especially at the time, I was sort of wandering around being like, wow, me and my friends were all so unwell. I wonder what's wrong with us. Are we special? Like, why is it like this? Why is this following me? And then I got to NAMI, and they gave me this big binder of resources. This was back in 2016. Maybe now they use something online versus a paper binder, but it was nice to have. And they gave us some scripts, and they trained us. And so we would answer the phones, and we would receive calls from all over the United States. And that is when I realized it's not just me and my friends. Oh, thank goodness. This is a problem that many people are experiencing. And I learned some of the statistics that, like, 1 in 5 people are in the US may experience a mental health condition. And I got to be in a position of empowerment because I went from being the person who had no idea what to do, and I had just hospitalized one of my best friends, and that had been a very traumatizing event. I was realizing that I had anxiety for the first time. I was going to therapy as an adult for the first time, and when I wasn't answering the phones, I had access to all these books that NAMI National just sort of had there for their helpline responders, and I read Carrie Fisher's book. She's the actress who played Princess Leia in Star Wars, and Leia. And she had bipolar disorder and also struggled with drinking. And she wrote some very short, very funny books about electroshock therapy that she experienced and all of these things. So I read some of those books. There were a ton of other books, and that's when I got to understand more about mental health in a way that I never had before. I understood how common it was. I understood how much suffering played a role into it. Really, like, part of the definition of dealing with a mental health condition, sort of that what people call dramatic, is the fact that you're in pain, that you're really in pain, that the situation you're in is causing you to suffer. And it really opened my eyes to so much. I learned about Psychology Today as a resource. They have lots of articles that you can read about. And then NAMI puts out incredible statistics about mental health. And then the lived experience portion, people who have been there helping other people go through it. And doing that was one of the most empowering things ever, just to hear people's problems and tell them, listen, I actually understand what you're going through, and I'm connecting with dads in their 60s, with sons and daughters trying to help their parents, spouses, people like me who are just concerned friends, all of these different groups. It was so incredible, and I did that for a year.
And you told me you were in the helpline too, and that must be a very interesting, in a way, if you want to call it that way,
it was
experience, because you're in an office, like in one mood, and then when you get a call,
Yeah.
your whole world changes to that person and whatever they're going through. How was that experience? How was it insightful?
Yeah.
Do you think how did you feel when helping people through the phone? How was that?
It was incredible, really, honestly. I mean, again, is so eye-opening for me, and in so many ways, such a relief to be talking about these issues, and also definitely an interesting experience learning about other people's lives, and they were telling me their most intimate stories and their personal problems, and things I'm sure that people that love them and know them every day have no idea about. So I sort of felt like, wow, I'm being trusted with some very sensitive information here. And I took it very seriously. And then, sometimes I would get off the phone and I would feel sad about what had happened. But usually people were so grateful that someone was talking to them and taking the time and providing them empathy. I mean, that's really all that people want. And I mean, that's what we do here at NAMI Miami as well. We have a helpline too that people can call. And the number is 305-665-2540. And I did that for NAMI Miami as well. So when I did go back to school, I graduated. I came back to South Florida. Some time passed. Eventually, I moved to Miami. And it just so happened that when I moved to Miami, the local chapter of NAMI was 1 mile away from my home. Not planned in the slightest. I was just looking for work.
Spiritual connection with them.
It was very, very aligned. Like I said, it followed me. Yeah, it just turned out that it was within walking distance of the place that I had moved to. I was looking for work, but I decided to volunteer in the meanwhile. And like I said, I had some free time on my hands, so I just kept showing up until they hired me. And here we are almost 7 years later. And so, yeah, answering the phones for NAMI Miami was really impactful too, especially because before it had been on a national level. I was just talking to people anywhere, in Seattle, New York, Ohio. And then here it was like, I'm helping my community. And that's what, we're doing. We're really here, boots on the ground in Miami-Dade and the Keys as well. And I mean, anyone else can call. We get calls from Puerto Rico. We get calls from, people all over the country sort of being like, hey, I have a family member in Miami, or how do I find resources in South Florida? And we're just always connecting people. And so the people that answer our helpline here are very brave. It's hard work. And it's not a crisis line. It's what we call a warm line, because people who call us can talk to somebody who can empathize. And, we're not just going to give you a number and send you on your way. We talk to you and we listen and we empathize with the issue. And if we need to, we will refer you to crisis services, but we will hold your hand through that process. We're not just going to drop you.
And how do you know you are, like, if you're struggling, why would you call that number? When do you call that number?
The NAMI Helpline?
Yes, like in what situation you have to be, or who is it for?
Yeah. So it's for anybody who wants information about mental health resources in their community. Anybody who is interested in NAMI programs. We have free support groups. We have classes. We do presentations. So anybody who is like, I need some support for me or my loved one, because NAMI offers support to both people who are going through it, who are considered peers, people with mental health conditions, or family members. So you might be the mom of somebody who has the mental health condition, and maybe you're overwhelmed, or maybe you're dealing with a problem with the schools and you don't know what to do. You can call us and we'll help you with it. And
for people who maybe do not know much about this, what is a mental health condition? When is the right time? Depression? what are those things?
Yeah. Well, I will repeat, I'm not a mental health professional. I can share the information that I know. And, mental health conditions vary, but common diagnoses can include anxiety, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, eating disorders, OCD, personality disorders. There's many different kinds. Often people have more than one and they don't know it. Oftentimes they're what we call comorbid, or simultaneous with something else, whether it's a developmental disorder or sometimes substance use, whatever it may be.
So basically, if you're struggling, or if you have someone in your family who's struggling, and you might think they might be going through depression or some type of anxiety, you would be calling. So, Kate, what do you think? We're reaching the end of the interview, and before leaving, what do you think are areas of improvement still in mental health, in general, in the country, in Miami? What are things that should be improved from your point of view, and what are the things you do to improve it?
Knowledge of resources, just knowing who you can go to. One of the biggest things that we hear at our helpline and in general when we're out in the community, we do a lot of outreach, is I wish I'd known about you guys sooner. I wish I'd known that NAMI existed. I would have reached out sooner. I would have given your information to somebody. So that's the big one, is that people don't know we're here and they don't know what we do is free. They don't know that it's offered in multiple languages and that we help not just the individual going through it, but the family and the support system around them so that everybody can get help. Because, 1 in 5 people have mental health conditions, but when you think about the people they have around them and how they're affected by it, ultimately we all are. So NAMI does this on several different levels. We focus on support, education, and advocacy. So we have those free programs that people can join, no insurance needed. You just register and you're welcome to join. Anyone is welcome to join. Education, we go out into the community and we share information about mental health conditions, the stats around it, the myths around it, what people can do, information about resources, and we advocate. We go to Tallahassee, we advocate for laws and for changes that are going to help people with mental health conditions, keep them out of the criminal system if they don't belong there. And we also do large events as well, like an annual walk for mental health awareness that we do that brings thousands of people together to celebrate that we're in a time where we are getting closer to talking about mental health conditions. And it's incredible elected officials come and support, and they're spreading the word too about mental health here in Miami-Dade. So it's a joint effort. We're all coming together to try and, change the way that things are.
So the key is to talk about it, ask. If you're seeing someone struggling, ask, talk about it without taboo, but with a lot of care, with a lot of sensitivity. And of course, always it's recommended to reach professionals' help. The helpline can be NAMI, can be if you're in another state, probably another.
Well, there's NAMIs all over the country. So wherever you are, chances are there's a NAMI.
Amazing. And finally, I would like to ask you something that goes to the heart of our project, Do Not Leave a Call to Stay.
Okay.
Because when people are struggling, they're doing self-harm, or they are having suicidal ideation, or they're going through depression, sometimes there's a force that it's easier to stay that way, to keep it that way, to stay in that moment, in that chaos, if we could call it. But there's something. There's another force that made you want to stop self-harm, that makes people want to leave that place. What would you say, where do you think, or particularly you, where did you find the light to stay, well, in your case was self-harm, but where do you think people can find the light to not leave and stay?
That's a very good question. I think in part it's remembering the last time you felt good, remembering what it is that makes you feel good, because when you feel bad, you kind of forget that you've ever felt good. And some moments now, even still, if there's depression that creeps up on me or something like that, all of a sudden it's like, well, I've just always been miserable. And you have to remember, actually, no, that's not true. I'm actually happy more times than I am unhappy. So that's an important reminder. And just remembering, what is that thing that made me feel happy? And for me, I knew that I was always motivated more so to do something for others. I felt, what excited me was the idea of helping other people, which is why NAMI is so incredible to me, is that it takes people from their darkest places. Oftentimes, mental health is usually where a lot of people have some of their darkest times, and we use that to bring light, to change how that looks. Like for a while, looking back at some of the experience I had, and I've been in the wards where people went, when they were hospitalized for mental health. It's very scary, and that stuck with me for a long time. But I'm so glad now that I have this experience, because when I talk about mental health conditions and when I represent NAMI, it comes from a place of truth, of heart, of I know what that looks like. And I know how scared you are as a family member thinking about your kid or your dad or whoever it may be in that psych ward, you know, experiencing that. So just having found what really I want to do, like remembering my purpose in some ways, is a big part of making through it. And that is what ultimately motivated me to stop self-harming. I knew I wanted to be in the field of psychology. I knew I wanted to help other people. I had this predisposition, and I knew that if I was self-harming, I wouldn't be able to tell other people that they couldn't self-harm. I was like, I'm going to be a huge hypocrite if I try to move forward with this. And I could sense that I was hitting a wall with my emotions and that I wasn't dealing with things well. So
I like the word purpose that you used. All right. Thank you, Kate, for this conversation. Thank you for being in this project, for being part of the project, for supporting this project. And is there anything else you'd like to add to this conversation? Some message you'd like to send to the audience, if someone's struggling out there?
Yeah, I just want to share that, you know, there is hope. And no matter how dark it might be, and you might think that maybe your past will make your future and your dreams impossible, it's not true. You know, that's one of the things that we do at NAMI, is that we take people's hardest times and we turn them into something that is all about shedding light. And there were moments in my past where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to get to do what I thought I wanted to do. I don't know how to move forward from this, but there is always a move forward. You're not stuck. Like eventually the answer will come, and you might be surprised by how you thought the thing that was dragging you down is actually the thing that's going to move you forward. So
thank you, Kate.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is another episode of Do Not Leave, a call to stay.